All right, we do have a few listeners on here, so while we're waiting for Steve to jump back on, I will welcome everybody to the show, and thank you all for jumping on with us tonight. Steve and I are going to talk a little bit about our end of October approaches, mainly asking him questions since he's I would put him in the category as an expert. So we're going to talk a little bit with Steve. We got some questions that came in on Instagram that people had for him, so we will dive into that. And, first and foremost, good luck to everybody. It's starting to turn on. We're very excited about what the next few weeks is going to bring. It's my favorite time to be in the woods, and it's very exciting. So I'll give a shout-out to our title sponsor of our program, and that's the Huntworks. So if you're in need of any tree stands or ladder stands or box blinds or ground blinds, check those guys out. I know their inventory has been going fast. They're having trouble like everybody else getting new stuff in, but head over to huntworks.com, check them out, and if you do purchase something, tell them we sent you, and it'll help support this podcast. So that's my little promo here for us, and while we're waiting for Steve to jump back on, we also have our links in our link tree. Get my hoodie squared away here. We got our links in our link tree of some of the companies that we have affiliate codes with. If you're shopping, if you're looking for any hunting stuff, especially shopping at Cabela's or your daily shopping on Camo Fire, if you'd use our link, it would be greatly appreciated. That's really the only money we make here with this podcast is anything that we get from our commissioned links or working with the Huntworks. Mr. Dan over there, that hardworking sumbitch, he hooks me up when we send business his way. So keep that in mind when you're looking to purchase stands. Let's see here. As I'm kind of treading water, waiting for Steve to get on. The guys were up north. I got a podcast I listened back to today. I plan to post that up on Monday morning. That podcast came out great. It was some awesome discussion. It was Jimmy, Uncle Chris, Uncle Tim, David, our cousin David, and his good friend Paul from college. And those guys had a really fun time. Sounds like they had a great hunt. The weather did not quite behave for them. So the podcast is pretty good. A lot of just storytelling and discussions and stuff like that. So look forward to posting that up on Monday. And I plan to get this episode posted up on our podcast channel for tomorrow morning. So anybody who's getting ready to head out into the woods this weekend will be ready to rock and roll with some relevant information. So without further ado, I'm going to promote Steve and make him an active speaker here, but I'll do that quick and give him a quick introduction. Steve, how are you? You're a little bit better? Your internet stronger?
I hope so. We'll see what happens. I feel like it could be one of those nights when it acts up, but let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah,
all is well other than that.
Good.
Looking forward to it.
All the kids are playing Xbox in the neighborhood, and it's sucking all the bandwidth out, huh?
Exactly.
Something like that. So I'm sure.
I don't know. Not to interrupt you. I can't see anyone or anything, but as long as you can hear me, I'll go with that.
Yeah. So the way that this is probably your first time experience bullhorn. So the way this works, you're a co-host. My brother was hoping to jump on, but I think he's got bedtime extravaganzas going on at his house right now. So luckily we just completed mine about 7 minutes ago. So I'm down here in the basement ready to rock and roll. But the way this works on bullhorn is you're a co-host, I'm the host, and anybody who's watching on their phone or on their computer can see you and I having this discussion, and then people can interact and call in if they'd like to join the conversation, which is kind of cool. And also they can drop questions and comments down on the board. We've already got one person, Scott Wade, said, hello from Big Pool, Maryland. We're reaching out there. That's the Steve Sherk reach we got going on here. So so it's pretty cool. It's a very interactive forum. If anybody, as we're talking here, if you have any questions that pop up, or if you'd like to even call in and ask Steve or myself a question directly, feel free. We'll get people on as they would like to call in. So I guess I'll
absolutely
just give you just a quick introduction of Steve Sherk. So I'm guessing most people that are listening to this that follow along with us also know who Steve is, but Steve is he's a big woods hunter. His name has grown quite a bit over the last couple of years, doing a lot of these podcasts with different deer hunting podcasts around the Northeast and even across the country. Really we all take a lot of information, really enjoy following along with you, and you run a guide service there in Northwest Pennsylvania. So we have a lot in common. The type of terrain and the type of habitat that we hunt is very similar. So it's great to get you on here. It's timely. I think we got together around this time last year and had a similar discussion. So excited to dive into some stuff with you. So thanks for joining us, Steve.
Oh, and thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to it once again. And it's just perfect time of year to be talking about this kind of hunting. And I don't know if you checked the weather forecast, but finally getting some good weather, like what I call rut weather. So that kind of sets the mood and even probably help my mind flow a little bit better, knowing that I got some real good hunting here coming in the future days.
Yeah. What are you looking at right now on the weather forecast? What is getting you excited?
Well, I really like tomorrow that, I mean, it's supposed to rain hard all night and temperatures are dropping rapidly. It's even going to be a little bit drizzly in the morning, but today was like 75, and then tomorrow it's showing like in the morning like 48 and a high of like 50 tomorrow. So should be about as good as it can get, in my opinion. Winds are only like 5 to 10, so I'm really excited.
Yep. Tomorrow looks like a great day to be in the woods. I wish I didn't have things that I could avoid doing, but I'm locked up. I'm cooking hamburgers and hot dogs tomorrow, so my day's not too hard tomorrow, but I got to feed people, so there's some value there. But yeah.
Hey, if I wasn't in the woods, I could go for the hamburgers and hot dogs, so it's not all that bad.
You're always welcome. It's a long drive to get a hamburger and a hot dog, but I've been told I can make a hockey puck like none other.
If I kill one early, you never know, I might show up.
Hey, the invite's always open. So yeah, I mean, the weather forecast does look like it's starting to pan up pretty well, especially getting a few of these cold fronts rolling through. We had that wicked weather last weekend. So how's the hunting been have you had clients in camp so far this year? Or?
We had a couple clients. That's it so far. We do got some guys coming in for tomorrow. Monday, we had 2 guys Monday through Wednesday. Monday was a really good day. Some guys had some really good encounters, and the one guy missed like a 120-inch buck. Then, man, after that, it's been a rough week. It's not even a couple does here and there. It just seems like the buck activity. I mean, they're moving a little better in the daylight, but it's been close to 70 or in the mid 70s the past few days, and it just kind of shut things back down again. So, like I said, that's why I'm super excited about the weather change that I'm seeing, because, I don't know if it always relates to the deer everywhere. I mean, I know cold fronts get deer moving, but it just seems like these mountain bucks, they do not like to move in warm weather, and it's tough. I think it's just harder on mountain deer to rut and cruise in these mountains, so they just wait for those right days, and hopefully the weather's right for tomorrow, like they're saying, and maybe one of us will get lucky.
Yeah. So let's like run. I got some questions, and I shot those over to you, but let's. Do you want to hit the questions first, and we'll just kind of see where that discussion goes? 'Cause I think that'll probably end up winding into a lot of what your strategy is going to be here. Does that sound good?
Yep, just fire away. That's how I prefer it to be.
All right. So first question we had that came through, and this is something you've talked about on here as well as on other podcasts, your 3-day approach. How you go into an area and you're focused on whether it's a particular buck or a particular, piece of sign that you're hunting. Let's talk a little bit about your 3-day approach, and are you using that in this next week and a half as we approach Halloween?
Yep. I mean, most of the time, once we get close to the rut, maybe somewhere around October 20th, it's 3-day approach, at least for all my clients. We try to get them to do the 3-day approach.
Uh-oh. We lost Steve. All right, I'm just going to kick him out real quick, everybody, and we'll try to get him back in here. So those Pennsylvania mountains are affecting his cell signal. Ah, darn it. All right, we'll see if he can jump back in here or not. So he was kind of running through what his 3-day strategy is, and I think that's something. If you have not heard what Steve's thoughts are there, I'm sure we'll get him back on here. But he likes to try to hit a spot 3 days in a row, and his theory is that he'll get a buck that's making a loop, and if he's not hitting them on that first day or second day, he feels within those 3 days that he'll get them to hit that spot. So that's what his strategy is there. If anybody's on here, we still got a good amount of people listening live here. If you have any questions or if you'd like to call in and check in what's going on, let us know what's happening in your area. We'd greatly appreciate that as I try to navigate through the technical difficulty. Of the folks we got listening, if you down in the chat box, if you message in, tell me where exactly, whether it's New York State or out of state. Curious where everybody's hunting from. I know I see Frank Maresco in the chat box. I think you're downstate. How have things been going with you down that way, Frank, with the EHD breakout? Have you been out hunting much, and what are you seeing? I guess I'm curious, having you on here, what your thoughts are. I need to get some pause music or something for you guys. Bear with us. Steve's trying to get back on. Oh, Uncle Dallas is on. Let's promote Uncle Dallas and see if he can help us through this situation. Uncle Dallas.
Hey, buddy.
Hey. Steve.
Just calling in to break.
Oh, thank you so much. You just saved me. Oh, we got Frank. I'm gonna promote Frank here. Stay with us, Dallas.
You got it.
Frank?
Yeah, hey, do you got me?
I got you. How are you?
All right. Yeah, I don't have any great news. Southeastern New York.
No, how's it been going so far? I know you and I wanted to try to connect to get you on, but you had been keeping us informed all summer long with the EHD breakouts down there. So how's it going?
Yeah, well, this year I'm just living EHD a year later because I got hit last year. But I see, luckily I haven't found anything dead, but unfortunately I haven't seen too much moving around either in the last 3 weeks. Just a deer sit, but I see it EHD throughout a large portion of the state. I think there was 1,900 reports. I don't know how much are confirmed. Just people reporting dead deer, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I'm looking for the live ones. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, amen to that. I wonder, it's just been so wet and so warm, and it seems like, you're living in it down there. I mean, that seems like that's where the biggest issues are, right? Is in the wet and warm.
I'm no scientist, but I only picked up on it last year, and last year they said it's in dry conditions, which was the case last year around here. It was a drought. But this year we got hammered with hurricanes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the amount of rain you guys got downstate was incredible with those storms.
We got hammered. I mean, maybe July was dry. So, I don't know. When you watch all the talking heads, they talk about EHD like it's really no big deal. So maybe I'm just not used to it. I don't know.
I'm almost more concerned about EHD right now than I am CWD. And that's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother discussion. But I see what's happening with these herds, and it's a brutal way for these deer to die. I mean, it's like
it is.
It's just awful.
It really is. I mean, they're dead. I tripped over 5 deer in 15 minutes last year.
Yeah, it's freaking.
I wasn't even looking for them. But
yeah, you were sending me all that stuff, and I was convinced you were some wackadoodle. But I actually started seeing the stuff in the news, and I'm like, oh my god, this is real. So
yeah. I don't want to dwell on the negative.
Yeah.
But
hey, man,
I'm looking for the live ones.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen too many. Just like a deer sit. That's interesting. They were saying sits in the same. So he sits in the same spot for 3 days in a row.
Yeah, we've got the man back on, and I gotta say thank you, Frank, for calling in and breaking the monotony. I thought I was going to lose the whole show there. Everybody was logging off and bailing on me. So
yeah, I'll go back to. to watch
extremely
him.
apologize.
You're good, man. I get it. Technical difficulties. Frank, thank you so much for calling in, and I really appreciate you following along with us here.
All right. I'll check in next week.
All right, take it easy. We're good, Steve. We got good people like Frank that are helping us. Dallas jumped on because he really saw me treading water over here, but son of a bitch, he's lagging again. It ain't working. What the hell? Just let me hold on a second. Let me call you, Steve. I'm gonna call you. This is a real bummer, isn't it? Freaking man of the hour. We're struggling with him. I'm going to put you back on, Dallas, because maybe you can help me figure out the world. You with us, Dallas?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, you doing all right?
Yeah. As far as the EHD, that's drought conditions that cause that.
Is it? Is that? I thought it was more wet, moist condition issues.
Because what happens in extreme drought, everything dries up, and then the deer have to congregate to these wet areas like mud puddles to get water. And there's a bug in there, I think they call it a midge, and that's what carries the EHD. So the bugs are in these mud holes or like, dried up ponds and creeks, and that's what infects the deer.
I'm just trying to get Steve. I'm trying to call Steve to see if I can get him to just call in like you guys are, because it seems to be working fine that way. All right, everybody hold with me here 1 second. I'm going to go upstairs where I got cell signal and call Steve. My Lord, it's the 21st century here. All right, I'm back. Steve's calling in, so bear with us. So anyway, Dallas, what do you got cracking? We'll get a quick update from you, how things are happening around here, and if we're able to keep Robert out of the prime hunting spots on his side-by-side at daylight.
Oh, yeah, he was close to shooting one of our no-shoot bucks tonight.
Oh, no shit. Which one?
It was good that he saw. The tall one with the kickers came out in the front food plot. He was up. He said it was raining pretty hard, so he was sitting in that buck hut.
Oh, no shit. It was the split G2 buck?
Yeah. Came out again.
All right, Steve, we got you now, Steve?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Yeah, and you sound much clearer. I don't know, must just be a little bit weak signal there for you.
Yeah.
All right, let's Dallas, I'm going to make you go away again. I love you, but we'll get your audio out of here. You guys are supporting me. I appreciate it. All right, Steve. So we lost you when we really just started talking about the 3-day approach. So I know we didn't really get into much to. Why don't you just give a quick rundown to what that 3-day approach is, and then what it is that you're trying to accomplish with that.
Okay. Yeah. So the 3-day strategy is we will hunt a morning stand for 3 days, usually till like noon. Then you'll also have an afternoon spot that you try to get into like as fast as possible, by 1, 2 o'clock at the latest. You hunt that for 3 days as well. And what I've kind of learned, and, I've only ever hunted big woods and mountain deer. So, this strategy may not relate to other kinds of habitat, but for the big woods, what you find is that, it's not like deer show up in the cornfield or the food plot every night. It's like they kind of make their rounds, and it seems like 1 out of 3 days, if you're in a good spot, eventually something shows up. Or if you're hunting an active scrape and you're getting pictures of a buck maybe 2-3 times a week, well, that's where the 3-day strategy can work really good, because you're just kind of waiting them out. So that's what, I've been doing that for several years now. Our clients have really had a lot of success doing it. And in my opinion, in the big woods, I just think that's probably the best strategy that we can, or that we've ever come upon.
Now, in those, what are you considering a morning spot and an evening spot? Like, how are you breaking those down? What are those to you?
I mean, a couple of reasons that might lead me to choose morning versus evening. I do prefer, in the rut to hunt closer to doe bedding in the mornings. Usually does don't get to bed or back to bed as early as bucks. So you can usually get closer to doe bedding, and it's a little bit safer too. Or a lot of times it's just trail cam intel. It's be surprised, and I'm sure some of the listeners and maybe even you notice, you'll check your cameras and it's like, geez, a deer are just only coming through this area at a particular time of day. So usually either, scouting, trail camera intel, or if it's, bedding, I'm hunting closer to doe bedding in the mornings, but I might hunt closer to a food source in the afternoons when I know I can slip in there, much safer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's one of those things, I kind of find myself, and I know Dallas and Brian and I, we talk a ton because we're hunting the same piece of property together. And I think sometimes you become so laser focused on the bedding, and you're only thinking about you can't blow out the bedding, but the deer aren't in the bedding all the time.
Yeah.
And
especially those.
Right. And right now, like we are. I mean, we have a pile of sow cams out. Our Cuddy Link system on the farm is giving us pictures every hour on the hour. And you've seen this shift over this week that the does are out wandering around, and we're even getting bucks, closer to being on their feet still at daylight, at sun up, and then they're showing themselves a little bit right before the sun goes down. So, but you're seeing those does. It's it's a good point to keep in my mind, and anybody who's listening to this is the does are up on their feet a little bit longer right now, and the cameras are showing that. And and
exactly,
that's important. So you're keying on the does quite a bit, and I know that was something when we came down and did our little scouting adventure with you down in your neck of the woods, was that you really key quite a bit on where the does are and what the does are doing, correct?
Yep, especially this time of year, once you get October 20th, 25th. From my experiences, like that's probably getting to be the number one thing on a buck's mind, even though, there's probably hardly any does in heat right now, but that's where you can take advantage of this time of year because the bucks are really starting to cruise. And they're putting more miles on now than what they may even do in November. Cause once they find a hot doe, they're going to be locked down here and they're not going to be moving around as much. So this is kind of a special time that a lot of hunters sometimes overlook. And, if you just get the right weather, another thing too about does that I, want to bring up, if there's some people, that hunt big woods, and thing about a lot of big woods areas is you'll find that there's just not a lot of deer in general. So that's when does really become key and help lead to success, because when you do find the does, you find where the deer are at. That's definitely where the bucks are going to be, because there's not even a doe on every ridge here. There's some ridges where there's nothing, so you find that pocket of does, and then that's kind of what the bucks do right now is they'll go from one doe group to the next, just scent checking, just making their rounds every day until one finally comes in heat.
Love it. So kind of one of the things that's happening right now with those bucks covering the ground, checking those doe groups, is they're laying a lot of sign down. So anybody who's been in the woods the last week has seen new scrapes opening, buck rubs everywhere. So let's talk about hunting scrapes. I had Will Troyer asked a question on the Instagram. He was wondering, I want to kind of get your thoughts on scrapes in general, but he's wondering your approach. Are you more focusing on scrapes in the morning, evening, any time of day? What are your thoughts on scrapes and hunting them?
This right now, like I said, with this cold front coming, there'll be bucks on scrapes any time of the day, but it really also depends on where that scrape is. I mean, if you want to hunt scrapes late morning, midday, or you got to be probably closer to bedding then. You'll find some activity around scrapes, with food sources early morning or late afternoon. So it really depends on, where that scrape is when you can probably expect to, to find or see, a mature buck hitting it. One of the tricky things about scrapes that I seem to find is the areas where I tend to see the most scrapes is where I get mainly, nighttime activity. So that's something that you got to watch out for is you might run into an area just polluted with sign, but, in general, deer move more at night than they do in the day. So when you're seeing a ton of sign and, scrapes, and especially this time of year, you might not just want to jump right on it real quick. You might want to throw a camera in there, let it soak 3 or 4 days, then wait and see, because you could easily be wasting your time. A lot of that's night activity. But if you know the area that you're hunting, where the deer bed, how they move, then that makes it easier, because, I've just have so much experience in some of my areas that I know, okay, when this scrape and this general location heats up, I know that's kind of like a safe zone, or it's near bedding, and I can already count on that being visited during the day. So that's a big key to scrape hunting, is knowing, is that scrape going to get daylight attention or not?
Yep. And that was one of the items that I took away that hammered home to me in the time we spent with you, was that it is so easy to just fall in love when you're in the wide open hardwoods, and you just see, for as far as you can see, you see, bright rubs on trees that were made within the last, week. And there's nothing more exciting than seeing that. And it's so hard not to get yourself to want to sit that, but
exactly.
You pointed that out. And then I think back to all the times that I've hunted sign like that and nothing has ever happened. And it's because 90% of that at least is made in the middle of the night. So you talk about scouting, and, not everybody's had the opportunity to get out and scout. But I think that there's a lot of value in season scouting. And while you're hunting, you should be scouting too, so as one of the things I was going to point out, about scrapes is right now there's a lot, it doesn't get any better than it does right now in late October. It's cooler, but we don't have snow. It's raining. So bucks are constantly trying to freshen those scrapes up, and they're checking on them. And, I had a hunt last year where I shot my archery buck, where I knew there was no way I was going to be able to get in there before the sun came up. So I ended up waiting until 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was a cold, dreary day. It was raining, and I was able to just get the wind in my favor and sneak in on the downwind side of this bedding area. And I found deer. We walked essentially right into them. They didn't smell us. They didn't know what we were, and there was a small buck chasing a doe. But I ended up working my way up the hill throughout the day, finding an extremely fresh scrape that seemed to be the hub of activity in that area on the downwind side of a piece of doe bedding. And that was something that I heard a few years ago on a podcast. Don't remember which one it was, but if you get a north wind, the next, and it could be a south wind, it could be any sort of wind that you could be on the downwind side of a bedding area that for sure is a place where does are living. Ever since I heard that has changed my experience of rut hunting with my bow.
Right.
Is that if I can get on the downwind side of one of those, and if you can find something like a community scrape or multiple trails that come together, and you can get downwind of that on the downwind side of a bedding area, like, you're in for one hell of a hunt, because the deer are going to be cruising.
Advantage of that wind.
Yep.
No, that's a great point. And I've it's a little tricky here sometimes, the way the wind swirls. It's always hard to trust the wind here, but I totally agree that bucks, this time of year, they're using their noses more to find does than their eyes. So, they're trying to cover as much ground as they can, and they can figure things out way better with their nose. So that's a great point.
Now, on the let's see, Scott just asked, how far downwind of doe bedding do you recommend setting up? Good question. I'll let you field that first, Steve.
Oh, okay. In my opinion, I don't want to be real tight to doe bedding. Although does are way more tolerable, in my opinion, to a human pressure. I'm not saying does, when I say more tolerable, I mean, they'll still they'll still definitely give you a hard time if you don't play your cards right. But generally, I try to stay maybe a couple 100 yards away, roughly. It all depends on where you're at, too, your access, and a lot of different variables. But that's, and it kind of also depends too on how you think a buck is going to move through that area too, the terrain, the sign they're leaving. But you don't want to get too far, because then you're going to miss everything. And another thing I do this time of year that is just deadly and that brings bucks into bow range is blind grunting. Especially, as a buck is, cruising even through those or the edges of those doe bedding areas, when he hears another buck grunting, I mean, that's exactly the first thing on his mind is he wants to get that buck out of there, especially if he's mature. So even if I might be a little too far off of that, being in the exact right spot, because I don't want to push the does out, that blind grunting, every like 10 minutes or so brings a lot of bucks into me as well. But I would say, 100, 200 yards plays it safe. Okay.
Yeah. And I guess, and that's not, that's off of where you feel the core of where the does are bedding. If you find an area that's, it's thick and it's got cover, the does are not necessarily bedding on the edge of that. They could be bedding on the middle of it. So you're saying from where the physical, you believe those does are bedding.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be like, there's maybe the does are bedding in a clear cut, and that clear cut, maybe the does are bedding in the middle of it, and from where they're bedding to the edge is 500 yards. But you got to probably get in the clear cut, because I don't think a buck's going to be skirting 500 yards away to pick up those does. So I mean, you got to kind of read the situation. If you're really confident, you just don't want to be within sight of those does. That's one of the main things. Get as close as you can. Hopefully you can get the wind right, but you just want to be just out of, probably where they're going to see you,
Yep. So I guess just the straight answer to Will's question of morning or night, it's kind of, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that, is what I'm taking from your thoughts. Like,
exactly.
Any time of day they can be hitting that scrape. But it certainly seems like, thinking about our family property, there's definitely more consistent big buck activity in the evening. Like, we're getting more of that in the last 20 minutes of light. Like, that's where we're seeing it, but that's based off of where our core scrapes are, where the bedding is, where the bucks are coming from. They're transitioning down the hill to that food source where the does are hanging. So it's taking them time. So we're learning we need to hunt between that transition and not fall in love with hunting that scrape, because they may not get there by the time that you can shoot them. So,
just to top on that, like people will probably be surprised, but tomorrow, where I'm going to hunt, I'm not even hunting a scrape. I'm hunting exactly what we're talking about. I'm probably like 200 yards from doe bedding, but there's just a well-defined trail. I'm still in the thicket, but there's a trail going right into where these does bed, and where the buck bedding is. I noticed that this trail goes from doe bedding to buck bedding, and I just think that's kind of like the perfect scenario, because if they come from bedding, they might come through, or you're going to come back to bed in the morning. It's a spot I could hunt morning or evening. So. But not hunting the scrape at all, when a lot of people would say you should be this time of year.
Yeah, and I want to hit on this. This is the question I had for you on scrape hunting. I think one of the things that I've made, and I don't know that I'm making a mistake, but I'm starting to think that I may be making a little bit of a mistake, is hunting too close to those scrapes, and also maybe not being in the correct position wind-wise on those scrapes. And the reason why I ask that, and why I'm thinking I might be getting a little bit too tight on some of these things, is that wind can swirl, and a lot of times those scrapes are in specific places because of that, because wind moves in a certain way. But then thinking about, I just keep coming back to this core scrape on our property. So many times we will get pictures of a smaller buck in the scrape with a more mature buck actually 15 or 20 yards behind the scrape.
Sure.
And he's monitoring what's going on, but he's not actively coming to that scrape. And I wonder how often, because of where you're positioning yourself, you may be messing that up before, and you may not even know that you're messing it up because you're either too close or your wind is not right for that more mature buck that's coming downwind of that scrape to check that without having to expose himself. Does that make sense?
I've always said, 30 to 40 yards from a scrape is better than like 15 or 20 because, most likely a mature buck, if you're one of those guys, which is okay, but you're shooting anything legal or anything with tines, then you can set 10, 15, 20 yards from a scrape because most young bucks will go just right to the scrape. But a mature buck, a lot of times, will go downwind 15, 20, 30 yards. And if you're too close, he's going to be right on top of you or come in behind you downwind, and, you're going to have an issue. So you can definitely back off a little more, 30, 40 yards. And if you're, a pretty good bow shot, I mean, with today's bows, 40 yards is a very makeable shot. So if he doesn't come in downwind and he goes right to it, he's still in bow range at 40 yards for most people.
Yep. Makes good sense. It's fun. It's a good thing to talk through. I think that's one of the things I love about doing these podcasts. It gets me thinking and talking through the scenarios before I'm out there, second guessing myself and forgetting half my equipment when I'm going to the tree stand and everything else. Okay, so that kind of hits the sign piece. Are you really taking a ton of value from rubs right now? Is there a certain type of rub or patch of rubs that you're saying this is something I want to key on, or no?
What I'm really looking for right now is I'm looking for does before anything. Once I find where does are congregated, then I'm looking to see if there's fresh buck sign in the area. Because it seems like what I'm finding right now is if you've been on bucks, throughout the late summer and early fall, it seems like those bucks have transitioned from their core area to the next, like, closest doe group. Like, they really haven't ranged very far, but in some, they're not really hanging exactly where they were 2-3 weeks ago. They've kind of shifted. It's what I call the rut shift. So I've been trying to, get around the edges of these core areas where these bucks have been hanging, trying to pattern the does because, like I said, it just seems like the closest doe group to where they've been mainly living that's kind of where they're really spending a lot of time now. If I find fresh rubs and scrapes in those areas, that just tells me for sure, yep, these bucks are definitely coming in, checking these does out.
Yep.
But does right now are more important to me than getting single trail cam pics of a certain buck because, I mean, like I always say, they only have, a short amount of time a year to get it done. And that's the number one thing on their mind right now. So if that's on his mind, you need to go where he's going to be headed, and that's where the does are.
Yep. And in these big woods environments, the only thing that really seems to be consistent is your does. The bucks are, it's been incredible. In the last week, it has been just a parade every night of different bucks that we're hardly getting the same buck night after night. It's amazing. And once we get closer to the rut, we'll start to see a little bit more consistency with a couple of those bigger bucks will hang around. It's what we had with that buck Frankenbeans for a few years. Once he moved into town around right now, like the 20th, 21st, 22nd in that range, he would move into the block. And once he came in, we would get every once in a while a mature buck would come through there, but he wouldn't stay long because I don't think Frank was allowing him to. So
somebody didn't want to mess with that special someone.
Got their ass whooped. So yeah, I would definitely. I think that's a fantastic point. That's something that I'm sure I heard you talk about that, and it's been a pure focus of mine. And it seems to, once you start worrying about where your does are, you start finding yourself in the middle of some good action pretty consistently. So
whenever, if you're a mature buck hunter, you always have to be thinking, there's different times of the year, the buck has different needs, but what is the most important thing on his mind? Right now, the rut is does. Once you get into gun season, it's post-rut. Bucks are worn out. Then they get hunting pressure. Then it's security over food. Sometimes it seems like food is a little more important than security when there's not much pressure. So you always have to read the situation and think, okay, what's a buck's number one need, or what's really on his mind right now. And once you know that, then you can figure out, okay, well, this area has what he needs, and that's where I'm going to set up.
Yep. Yeah. So you have to adapt. That's another piece too. The season's going to move quick, and this window doesn't last long. So don't get hung up on what you're doing, because it'll change in just a week or two.
Exactly.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. Next one is a question I had for you, and it's something that I'm looking at based off of my life schedule and how busy things are with young kids and a wife and a house to take care of. I'm getting some opportunity possibly to get some midday hunts in, to get out and hunt, middle of the day from maybe 9 or 10 to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Have you ever done that? Do you have any thoughts or any tactics that you would exercise in those sorts of approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, when we talked about the 3-day strategy, it's not like we're hunting daylight till 9 a.m. and then 3 till dark. It's, daylight till noon, and then in a stand from 1 to dark. So that midday, experience is what we're doing every day. And, once again, it just seems like midday or mid-afternoon, you definitely have more success if you're closer to bedding versus food source. If you're hunting feed, it just seems like that, about a 6, 7, 8 hour stretch, literally, it will just die off. Food might be good for an hour or two in the morning and an hour or two in the evening, but if you hunt closer to bedding, the activity may not really turn on till 9, 10, 11 o'clock, but you might have 4, 5, 6 hours of constant activity. So I would definitely say hunt. If you're going to be more of a midday hunter, you got to get closer to bedding, Ben.
Yep. All right. Well, I already knew what I wanted to do, but that just kind of helps me think about it, because I'm looking at, I've got 2 days off, the 28th and 29th. So next Thursday, Friday, Jimbo and I and our buddy Jeff, and then hopefully maybe other couple people, we're going to head to camp. We got all day Thursday, Friday, and hopefully most of the day Saturday if we need it, to try to get a buck on the ground. But if I don't, I'm going to look at my work schedule and things I've got. If I can knock out just a couple, 2-3 hours. And I even did that this past Sunday. The kids went down for a nap, and I said to my wife, hey, you care if I head over to the farm for a couple hours? And it was windy, and it had rained all night. The weather had kind of blown through. There was a front, and I wanted to just kind of go and sneak around on the downwind side of the property and just see if there's any sign. And I think that's something, a lot of us are in the same stage of life. There's a lot of conflict right now, and there's a lot of challenges to get out. So if you can find a couple, 2-3 hours here or there, don't just throw that away. Go out and try to do something
during the rut.
Yeah, because anything can happen. And the one thing that so I'm going to kind of dovetail this into a question that Aaron Lehman dropped in the box there. He was wondering, how often do you blind call and rattle at this time of year? So where I was going to go with that is, you go out, you just have a short window of time. It doesn't, it's something that I need to remind myself of is maybe go put yourself in one of those good spots on the downwind side of a bedding area, or a thicket where you think a buck might be, and make a little noise, sit in the bushes in the goldenrod and see if you can rattle something in. How often, if you're let's say you're sitting in a tree stand tomorrow, how often are you doing any blind calling? Yeah.
People probably think I'm crazy, but honestly, about every 5 minutes. And I call as loud as I can. Not like, if you blow on a grunt call too hard, it sounds like a duck. Not like that.
Right.
But as loud as you can and make it still sound right. I don't really do a lot of long grunts, just a lot of short grunts in different directions. The reason why, I go every 5 minutes is, I've watched so many bucks cruising, passing by my stand, throughout the day. My life it's just amazing how fast a buck can get by you. So people might think, well, it's just not going to sound right because, the deer's going to be like, that's just not normal every 5 minutes. But yeah, does that might be hanging around, I might bother them a little bit, but a cruising buck this time of year, within 5 minutes, there's a good chance he's 300, 400, 500-yard stretch in 5 minutes. So that's why I'm grunting so much, is your window of time to reach out to a buck may only be a couple minutes, and then he's gone, So, and also, even though deer have tremendous hearing, many times, I've grunted at a buck, and I swear they didn't hear me. Like this time of year, that they're just, they're just crazy and making noise, and they don't always hear that grunt that easily. So, maybe if he hasn't passed by me, maybe all of a sudden before he's just out of hearing range, after 5 minutes, finally he hears me and he comes back. So I've killed, I don't know the exact count, but I bet you at least a half dozen pretty good bucks from blind grunting. And like there's a difference between just a buck showing up or a buck heard you grunting and he comes in pissed. Like that's when that your blind grunting worked. And like I said, I know at least a half dozen of my better bucks have fallen to the ground because I blind grunted them in.
Yeah. And, I think that's pretty effective when you're hunting in a big woods area where you've got some topography, because those deer, they are covering so much ground. Whereas, I don't know, I have a unique experience now because I'm hunting, I have a little bit of both. I've got, kind of your standard, block timber, ag land I'm hunting, and it's a totally different experience to hunt this and then to go to our hunting camp over in Naples. It's two different worlds. The way that the deer move, the way they act, the way they feed, it's completely different. So
I believe that.
The big woods experience, as much as I love being able to just, I'm blessed to have the farm right down the road from my house, and I can go hunt for 2 hours if I want to, and I have to drive an hour. But there's something about hunting in the big woods when you have no idea what's going to come over that ridge or around that point,
Yep. No, I'm 35 years old and basically been hunting, 20 some years, and I've only ever hunted the big woods. And since I've been guiding, especially in like the last 5 years, get a lot of people like outfitters that want to trade hunts. And I just, I'm not against hunting deer in different environments and habitats, but I'm so in love with the big woods that this is all I want. So I never go anywhere but here in the big woods.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to leave, man. And my brother's the same way. I tried, actually, I think Jimmy would fall in love with it, but I try every year to drag him to come down to PA with us for our big family hunt down there, and I can't get him to leave camp because he loves it. Like it's in his blood, and it's in my blood too. But I also think once you branch out and you try doing some of these hunts in different states or different areas, I think it makes you a better hunter.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a firm believer that understanding the big woods makes you a better hunter in many ways, because you have to understand more factors.
Too. Yeah. Yep. I agree totally.
Now I'm just like king of dovetailing into topics here. So I'm pretty sure Adam was being a smartass when he asked this question, and I frown on his question being a smartass like this, but he said, how do I kill multiple bucks during bow season? And I responded to him and I said, from a jail cell is how you would do that. But I guess I was thinking about that. I'm like, well, it's actually not a half bad question to answer. The answer to that is we live in an awesome area here in Western New York where we have access to a neighboring state where you can buy a hunting license for $100 and go hunt in Pennsylvania. And vice versa for you. You're just over the border into PA, so you have a New York license every year, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And
can bounce right back and forth. So there's your answer, Adam. You can hunt multiple states, and you can shoot a buck here, and then you can head down there, and you guys, your gun season doesn't open up till after Thanksgiving, so there's a lot of time in November to get down there to PA to hunt. So
yeah, I don't know where he's from, but if you're, that's a good way to look at it. If you're not too far from from a state that's bordering you, that's the best way to do it. Instead of, most of us aren't fortunate to be able to, go all over the country to try to accomplish that. So it's better, if you're within, hour or two at the most of, getting in another state and doing some hunting there, that would definitely, I would agree, be the best way to accomplish that.
Yep. And I don't know what podcast I was listening to today, but the guys brought up, and I think it's a fascinating point. I think if you only ever knew that 100-acre piece of property that you've hunted, you have a really hard time thinking and looking at things differently. Whereas once you start, whether it's going to a different state or trying to hunt public land or going to a friend's property and seeing how things happen there and how they hunt it, I just think it makes you just progressively better. I think exposing yourself to different things will make you more effective in what you're trying to do in your area. So,
absolutely, I agree.
Yep. That was all my questions. Fantastic stuff, and I appreciate the stuff that people popped in there. Ben Williams messaged in and agreed. He said he's killed most of his bucks between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. And
sure,
you know, it's music to a father's ears, because I'm looking at those numbers. 9 a.m. if I went out hunting at 8:30, that means my wife got to sleep in. If I'm out by 2 p.m., I'm home. She's happy. The kids are napping. She can, like, it's just a win-win for everybody. So I'm going to.
Well, here's something too. I'll just bring on, kind of add on to that. Like when I guide, like a lot of times, you know, I have to sometimes physically take a client or two to their stand. So I'm rarely in a stand before the sun comes up. You know, a lot of times it's, you know, even like, you know, like say tomorrow, I probably won't get in if I'm lucky, get in a stand till close to 8 o'clock. And to some guys, that'd be like, oh man, I just lost my whole morning. When I mean, yeah, there's a small chance I might have missed out on something, but it's really only getting better later morning and throughout the day than, you know, often that first hour. So,
you
know, I just, you know, to anyone, say, you know, you might be a guy, just your work schedule is like, you know, I can't get out there till 9 or 10 a.m. Maybe you work nights or something. You're not really missing out on much, you know, in the rut. So, heck, go out there at noon to 4, whatever. It can actually happen at any time during the rut. So don't think about the, you know, the usual morning, evening deer movement. I mean, we're talking, you got just as good of a chance at any time of the day, and the midday might actually be the best.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And it's easier to be out there in the middle of the day than it is bright and early, especially if you had too much fun at camp the night before. That's important. So you got clients coming in pretty steady here through the rest of archery?
Yeah, I mean, this week it's not too busy this week. Like I said, we just had a few guys come in. We'll only have those few, you know, through Saturday, but then Sunday, geez, I'm pretty sure we got about 6 or so coming in. But the only thing that looks scary to me is, and it doesn't bother me, but it looks like rain every day next week. And I don't know, you know, some of these guys, a lot of hunters aren't fond of hunting in the rain. So
yeah,
it might be another rough week. If I can't get people in the stands, then there's not many deer that are going to hit the ground. But then again, I guess it just means more for next year. So the weather, you know, not only impacts deer movement, but, you know, even you get a year with bad weather, and really overall, not just my clients, but it's going to save deer. So we complain about, you know, tons of snow or rain or wind, but sometimes it leads to a good thing in the long run.
Yeah. Nature will do its thing, right? It has a way of keeping things in check. Have you guys, what you should do if you got rain coming, I don't know, have you ever used those screw-in umbrellas that you put up on the tree?
And that's what I've been messaging every guy, like for next week, like, man, just get an umbrella.
Yeah. And,
you know, I've done that in the past. It just depends on how serious of a hunter it is. Like, to some people, you know, to maybe a somewhat average hunter, not that I don't really judge hunters, but to some guys, it's just like, man, it's raining, I'm staying in camp. I don't want to be in the rain at all. So it just depends on, you know, their needs and how they want to hunt. I'm certainly not going to force anyone to get in a tree, but, you know, a ground blind or, you know, one of those tree umbrellas, I mean, make a world of difference. And another thing about the rain is I actually love hunting in the rain. I don't really care to hunt in like an extreme downpour, but, you know, a medium rain or a light drizzle, I think the deer move even better those days versus, you know, they, like us, you know, we just want to go crawl in bed and take a nap, but to deer, it gets them moving. So those days are definitely days you want to be out there. Don't let a little bit of rain keep you at home, because it's only going to make the hunting better.
Yeah, agreed. And I was listening, you're probably familiar with who Todd Mead is. You know who Todd Mead is? So I was listening to him. He did, Dan Ladd and him are good friends. Dan Ladd's the editor here of New York Outdoor News. And they did a live video last, I don't know if it was Monday night or it was last week. I think it was Monday night. It was the night of the Bills game. So obviously I had priorities. But I did listen back to it today, and pretty interesting discussion. And Todd's a guy that when he's on a podcast, I'm listening. He's pretty fascinating, and he's had a lot of success all over the country chasing deer.
Right.
And but he made a point that, you know, they were talking about this muzzleloader weekend this past weekend up north, in the Adirondacks, and it was just a washout. I mean, it just downpoured. Sure. It was warm. It wasn't ideal, but they got talking about weather, and Todd really sounds like he really likes to target being out there when the weather is awful, you know, raining, foggy, kind of nasty. And, you know, his theory is that there's less hunting pressure, and the big bucks know that, and they feel more comfortable moving in that situation. And, you know, I think to some of the wildest hunts I've had, and some of the best bucks I've seen shot, it's been on some of those days where it's like, why am I even out here? You know, the trees are whipping and the wind's blowing, and it's like, this doesn't make any sense. But, you know, I had Brian shoot a big 8-point right out from, it was right between the two of us. I watched him shoot it. That was incredible. And that was one of the worst weather days I've ever been out there. I've seen, you know, Thanksgiving hunts we've had up here during gun season where, you know, it's just nasty and freezing rain and awful. And here comes a great buck walking across the middle of the hardwoods. So
absolutely,
you got to be out there. I mean, I understand some people, it's not that important to them, but there's a great opportunity to be had when that weather's not great.
Yep. No, don't ever look at the rain in the forecast and think, well, it's not worth going out there, because it's completely opposite of that.
Yep, for sure. Well, being courteous of your time, you wanted to stay to an hour, and we've been successful at that. So I'll kind of leave it to you if there's any closing comments or anything you want to leave everybody with as they're heading into this last week of October, what they should be thinking about.
Yeah, maybe just a couple tips. You know, right now I brought up, even though I'm not hunting scrapes, you know, I would definitely, from now till probably, you know, close to Halloween or about Halloween, scrapes are going to be really good, especially near doe feeding and doe bedding. Those scrapes that we're getting action on, you know, a week to 3 weeks ago, you know, a lot of them, you'd be surprised, are going to be drying up. So you definitely got to keep up with the changes and, you know, keep adapting this time of the year. I've always, you know, I've talked to many hunters. Some guys say I only kill bucks in October, and some guys say I only do it in November, and they wonder why. Like, I think what it is some people they haven't been able to adapt through an entire season of the changes that deer and especially mature bucks make. So I just, you know, you definitely got to be keeping an eye on making sure you're not doing the same thing and hunting the same style and the same ways throughout the entire season. But the rest of this month, because, you know, we were going to talk about late October, you know, look for that hot buck sign, find the does first, and those bucks will show up.
I love it. It's good stuff, Steve. I appreciate you helping us here. And this is our fourth Breedinum Radio episode, which we've got 18 listeners on here live. And it might not seem like a lot to everybody, but we, you know, our downloads have gone up significantly this month on our actual podcast channel. And this is kind of something new for us here on Bullhorn. So this is the most listeners we've had live to a show, and that's absolutely incredible. So I appreciate everyone who's new listening to us today, because we're trying to grow this thing. We've been at the podcast for a couple of years now. We're a Western New York group of guys that's avid about deer hunting and everything it is with the lifestyle. So we appreciate your support, Steve. You've been awesome with us and help us kind of spread the word. And I would give you maybe a probationary Pert Near Pro Staff team member. I don't know.
Okay.
You're getting there. I don't know. I'll give you a hat or
thanks.
something.
Yep. Thanks. I think this is the second or third time we've got to talk. It's been great every time. And I want to thank anyone who's been patient tonight with the technical difficulties. Appreciate you listening. And I'm sure you're a follower of mine, and I appreciate that as well. And I just wish everyone who listens to this, a safe and successful season.
Good stuff, Steve. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night, Steve, and shoot the big one tomorrow, buddy.
You too, bud. Good luck.
All
Thanks.
Right, see ya. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And if you need a tree stand to put your bud in, visit thehuntworks.com. Oh, what about that plug there, Dunnigans? Nailed it. See ya, people.